A good-natured old gentleman, Mr. Wilson, cautions George that to fight for the fugitive is the same as setting yourself in opposition to the laws of your country. George responds, he is going to appeal to God Almighty, to go with the case to Him and ask Him, if I do wrong to seek my freedom, what country do I have but the grave? Born of slave mothers, what laws are there for us? As George expounds to the old gentleman on the unfairness to his race, he tells the story of his sister, a pious good girl, a Baptist, well brought up, with good manners, traded off, whipped in front of him, then chained with a gang to be sent to market in Orleans like a horse or a hog. This is what the author, Mrs. Stowe, said about this scene. Scenes daily and hourly acting under the shadow of American law, George said. She was whipped, sir, for wanting to live a decent Christian life, such as your laws give no slave girl a right to live. If you haven't had enough cruelty, let's take a break from the ongoing story and watch a slave auction. Haley would prefer buying the boy from a plantation hand and let the half-blind, crooked with rheumatism old mother go. Why, she's only a rack of bones, he mutters to himself. On the riverboat, La Belle Riviere, on its way back to New Orleans, the slaves talk among themselves about the wives and children that are left behind, that they will never see again in this world. This is the slave John to me. I've got a wife, and she don't know a word about this. Poor girl. I wish now I could see her once more in this world. Haley is standing there with a whip, telling them to be cheerful. But some will not. Here, the article escapes into a state which never gives up a fugitive. I said he saw something go by me in the night. Haley jotted down in his account book the missing body under the heading of losses. Here is where I meets Evangeline, daughter of St. Clair, for the first time. A little delicate daughter between 5 and 6 years of age. Mrs. Stowe describes her as a sunbeam, her face a perfect beauty with earnestness of expression, golden brown hair. An airy and innocent playfulness seemed to flicker like the shadow of summer leaves over her childish face. My first impression was that I believed I saw one of the angels stepped out of my New Testament. She seemed something almost divine. I asked, "What's the little missy's name?"
Evangeline St. Clair. The papa and everybody call me Eva.
Eva tells me her papa can buy me for her. But before long, Eva loses her balance and falls over the railing. I immediately rescue her. Eva tells her papa to buy me, and a discussion takes place between St. Clair, her father, and Haley for a sum of around $1,300, with the usual amount of bargaining. The exact settlement is not known. My new master, Evangeline, puts a wreath of roses around my neck. It's like a child caressing a large dog, Aunt Ophelia says to Augustine St. Clair. St. Clair remarks, "What would the poor and lonely do without children? This is one of the roses of Eden that the Lord has dropped down expressly for the poor and lowly, who get few enough of any other kind." We are now in the Quaker house of the Hallidays. George is now united with his wife and little Harry. They realize they are not safe yet and must push on to Canada. Is God on their side? George asks. The Bible is. They take leave of the Quakers. A Quaker brother, Phineas Fletcher, follows to help George and Eliza escape the slave catchers. George stands his ground like when I was being very brave. Phineas pushes one of the party of the slave catchers over into a chasm. Needless to say, they decided to go back for more help. Back to St. Clair's plantation on Lake Pontchartrain. An old bony African woman carrying a basket of bread on her head returns to the kitchen, sullen and grumbling. "Oh, Lord, I wisht I was dead." "Why?" Miss Ophelia questions. "I'd be out of my misery," says Aunt Prue. A short time later, a kitchen woman declares, "Prue isn't coming any more." "Why not? She ain't dead, is she?" "We doesn't exactly know. She's down in the cellar. She got drunk and they had her down there and left her all day. I hear 'em saying that the flies had got to her, and she must be dead by now." At this time, St. Clair tells another anecdote, so to speak, about how he broke a fellow once with kindness. He was a gigantic African named Scipio. He had escaped from a neighboring plantation, and they hunted him down like a deer with dogs. This illustration is called Field Sports Down South. He was finally brought down with one shot from a gun after he had killed 3 of the dogs with his naked fists. St. Clair finally bought him from the neighbor Fred, and in a fortnight he had tamed him and dressed his wounds. He never had a better fellow and trusty. He embraced Christianity afterwards and became as gentle as a child. He used to oversee the place. Here he laid down his life for St. Clair when he was sick and brought him back again. Then he was lost in the first cholera season. There was no saving him.